Why did you do that?
Oh no!
I did not press that. I hit the jump button as I died. What do you think that does, Kate?
I'm assuming it burns you. I don't know. Oh my god.
They had to make a special law because of him, huh?
Hope this ain't the guy that got
Why did you have to put that back into my head now? My brain literally
never
had
left.
pushed into the recesses of my brain where I wasn't thinking about it anymore.
Exactly, but it was still there. Because you can't get rid of that once you found out about it.
It's like the scene from the Gentleman. It's like, oh no, this shit scars me. No, that'll be with me for the rest of my life. It's fucking nightmare fuel.
Be on my deathbed, think about it, be like, oh Christ.
It's like, all right, time to see what's in the great unknown. Ah, fuck. His last thoughts were of this video, and then it's played at my funeral, and it fucks everyone up. Like, why was he thinking about that? It's just like, I don't know. I guess whenever you die, see if this is the last thing that comes to your mind. Fuckers. So, Mr. Ballin, they had to make a special law because of him. I don't know what this is about, but I do know that this one was very highly recommended on our Discord, so here we are. This is a Mr. Ballin video that a lot of you out there have wanted us to watch, and also, we are using headphones, so this video will be a lot easier to edit, and I can't wait. I can't wait to edit these because, oh, it's going to make things so much easier.
We'll have to sync audio no more.
Yeah, exactly. No more. It's all done. The only drawback right now is that we have to have one headphone off in order to hear each other, but I'm gonna... Also,
the audio might become ever so slightly unsynced from the video, but it shouldn't be noticeable. It's just...
Well, no, I got rid of that. I got rid of the audio off sync.
No, I'm just saying, like, the audio for this, if we don't adjust by, like, 3 frames, it will be off from the video by, like, 3 milliseconds, but that shouldn't be noticeable because there won't be an echo. It's usually only noticeable because it makes it have a slight echo.
That's true.
Not because it's super off from, like, the lip sync or anything.
But... I
guess
guess
like 3 frames is like, you know, some milliseconds. It's not like super noticeable.
Yeah, so either way though, we have Mr. Ballin's video here. Let's go ahead and check it out and see what kind of craziness Mr. Ballin's going to reveal to us today.
Late at night on August 15th, 2019, 2 police officers in England were driving in an unmarked police car along this narrow, winding road when all of a sudden, right in front of them, another car came bombing down the road towards them. And so both cars came to a screeching stop, and then one occupant from this other car got out of their vehicle, and one of the officers got out of their vehicle. What happened next was so horrific that a special law was passed to make sure it never happened again.
Damn.
But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, please remove the prong in all of the like buttons belts. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today.
I might have an audio solution whenever we finish this.
Okay.
Or whenever we finish recording.
Okay.
Like... I think you should try Sonar and see if you can use and get it to work that way.
Okay.
Also, we can EQ the audio to sound better with Sonar.
Okay.
On July 18th, 2019, 28-year-old Andrew Harper scrawled a little note inside of a card, and then he folded the card up, he slipped it into its envelope, and he handed that envelope off to a nearby friend. And this friend, after getting this envelope and Andrew's directions for what to do with it, he left Andrew's room and began walking down the hall all the way towards the other side of the Ardington house. The Ardington house where they were staying is this beautiful mansion built in the 1700s that sits on about 30 acres of gardens and parklands, and it's located about an hour west of London in the English countryside. Once Andrew's friend, with this letter in hand, had walked all the way across the mansion and had found the room he was looking for, he gently knocked on the door, and then after being led inside, he made his way right over to 28-year-old Lissy Beckett, and he handed her the envelope. Lissy and Andrew had grown up in the same town of Wallingford, which is a small rural town about 10 miles away from where they were, the Ardington house. And from the time Lissy and Andrew had met each other when they were 15 years old, they had become totally inseparable. It was truly love at first sight. And now, 13 years later, they were finally getting married. And so Lissy, after getting this envelope, she saw the writing on the outside of it and knew it was from her fiance. And so she smiled, she opens up this letter, and she reads what's inside. And it just said, "Life is slippery. Here, take my hand." While on the surface, this little note seemed like nothing more than a romantic gesture from Andrew, in reality, those 7 words contained in that card were a great representation of who Andrew really was. He was a protector. Ever since Lissy could remember, Andrew had always been so concerned with her safety. And for that matter, anybody around Andrew was just worried about and wanted to make sure everybody was taken care of. And as Andrew got older and grew to be this massive 6'5" tall man, his natural inclination to protect other people only became more pronounced. While Andrew was known for being incredibly charming and friendly and approachable, at a moment's notice, he could flip the switch and literally step in and use his big frame to protect anybody that needed protecting, no questions asked. And so it came as no shock to Lissy, or really anybody who knew Andrew, when Andrew, at the age of 19, became a special constable or volunteer police officer for the Thames Valley Police Department. This police department was the same one that oversaw Wallingford, where he and Lissy had grown up, and also the surrounding areas. And just a year after becoming a special constable, Andrew had done such an amazing job that he was hired on by the Thames Valley Police Department to be a regular constable, so a full-fledged police officer. And over the following years that he was a regular constable, Andrew's hard work and dedication would quickly make him one of the most well-respected and well-liked police officers on the force. In fact, just a few weeks...
It's actually, you're not allowed to call it the force anymore, you have to call it the service. For those of you who get that reference, I applaud you. That's a deep cut reference to anyone out there who gets that.
Before he sent off that letter to Lissy on the day of their wedding, Andrew had been promoted.
Also, if you get that reference, there might be a small bonus intact for you. We'll see. We'll see if any of y'all get that reference.
Been assigned to the road policing unit within the Thames Valley Police Department, and what that meant was, in addition to a host of new responsibilities on a day-to-day basis, Andrew would now become one of the police officers who would immediately respond to any emergency call that came in. He was basically a front lines police officer now. And so, of course, this meant Andrew's job just became a lot more dangerous, but for Andrew, that didn't matter at all, because to him, the most important thing was protecting people in need. And so this promotion just gave him a bigger opportunity to do that. And so Lissy, after reading this little note that Andrew had just sent her, she set it down on the table, and now with a big grin on her face, she finished getting ready, and then that afternoon, she and Andrew would walk down the aisle, and they would say, "I do," in front of their families and their closest friends, and then that evening, after the newlyweds had had their first dance as a married couple, they would tell each other that this was the happiest day of their lives. 28 days later, on August 15th, Andrew, along with his partner, who also was named Andrew, his name was Andrew Shaw, they were conducting...
Oh, the Andes. Come on, you got to get that reference at least.
Yeah.
A surveillance operation.
About 28 days later, and I'm just like, well, that's bad.
It's
a horror movie.
We call these two the Andes. Don't get up.
In a town called Reading. Reading is a town about 30 minutes south of Wallingford. Just after 11 p.m., the men finally decided it was time to shut down their operation and head back home. Their shift had actually ended 4 hours earlier, but being hardworking and diligent police officers, they had worked overtime because they knew it would help their unit. But now at 11 p.m., they were totally exhausted, and so as they're kind of yawning and packing up their things, Shaw, who was driving, would fire up the engine of the unmarked BMW car they were in, and then once it was on, he would pull away from the curb, and they would start heading north. At the same time, a very distressed man who lived not far from where Andrew and Shaw had just been doing surveillance, he called 999 and he told the dispatcher that just a few moments ago, this gray sedan had pulled up his driveway and stopped right outside of his property. Now, this man's property was off of a road called Admore Lane, which was this winding one-lane country road that had very little traffic, and there was not that many properties off of it. And so for anybody to pull on to this man's property would have caught his attention, let alone a car pulling onto his property in the middle of the night. And so as soon as the man had seen these headlights coming up his driveway, he had gone to the window and watched, wondering, what is this person doing? Had they turned onto the wrong property? Are they going to turn around and leave? But to his horror, once this car had stopped right outside of his house, 3 masked men who were carrying weapons of some kind got out of the vehicle. And so at that point, the man had frantically dialed 999, and as he's trying to describe the situation to the dispatcher, he suddenly tells the dispatcher, as he's looking out the window, that he thinks these men are here to steal his quad bike. His quad bike was parked right outside of his detached garage, and he saw them walking towards it. And so he tells the dispatcher, who's already told him that police are on the way, he tells the dispatcher, I can't wait any longer. I'm going out to confront them and stop them from stealing my bike. The dispatcher yells at him not to and says, they have weapons, stay in your house. But this guy's not listening, and so he runs to his front door, he opens the front door up, but by the time he's looking outside, the gray car, the 3 masked men, they're all gone, and so too is his quad bike. And so he goes back in the house, he's talking to the dispatcher, and the dispatcher says, look, just stay at your house, the police are on the way, they will intercept that car, they'll get your quad bike back. And so seconds later, a call went out over the radio to Thames Valley Police to go and intercept this gray car on Admore Lane. So whoever was closest, go over there, but be advised, the occupants of this car are 3 masked men that are armed and dangerous. Now, Andrew and Shaw, when they heard this call, they would have known that they were not the only officers that could have taken this call. And they also would have known that they've been off the clock now for like 4.5 hours. There was no expectation that they would continue to work and go take
same
this call. But they didn't care at all. When that call came across, the only thing they thought about was, do your job. And so Shaw, he whips the car around and he speeds towards Admore Lane and he pulls off of the main road called the A4. He gets onto Admore Lane and he starts driving north. Now, as soon as they turned onto that road, their vehicle effectively blocked the way for anybody coming the other direction. And so at this point, they're expecting this gray car full of these masked men to be coming in their direction, and they are now blocking the way. And so Andrew and Shaw, as soon as they get on that road, they know a close quarters confrontation is almost guaranteed. But when you listen to the dash cam footage from the front of their vehicle that picked up the voices of Andrew and Shaw as they turn onto this road, there is no nerves, there's no...
Look at the kitty. Look at the kitty. Hey, buddy. Aw.
He's my sweet boy.
Yeah. Vega is a sweetheart and he's a chubby bud, but he's a good cat. Some would even say he's a great cat.
He's a great kid.
Yeah. All right.
He's obnoxious sometimes, but he's great.
Back to it.
no fear, there's no hesitation. They are calm as can be. This is what they have trained for. They were ready. And so Shaw, he's making his way up this winding road. It's totally pitch black. The trees are practically on top of the road. It's like a tunnel of trees. And so they're driving along this road, and then all of a sudden, up in the distance, you can see on the dash cam footage, you see headlights bombing toward them. They're way off in the distance, and then all of a sudden, that car, these headlights, they come flooring out right in front of them, and both cars come to a screeching stop. You can hear the screeching of the brakes on the dash cam footage. And so this car in front of them comes to a full stop, and Shaw, he stops, but then he moves up just a little bit closer before fully stopping the car. And so now the two cars are only maybe 10 or 15 feet apart. At this point, it's important to understand that the vehicle that Shaw and Andrew were in was an unmarked car, and they had intentionally not put on their blue lights as they're cruising up this road because they didn't want the suspects to see the blue lights in the distance and turn around and get away.
Yeah.
And so now they've come face to face, and so Andrew and Shaw, they're looking at this vehicle,
these dudes in the car
and they
are
can
all
see
just
that
like,
one,
what the hell
it's a
are
gray
these
sedan,
Micahs
so it
doing?
What the fuck are these bastards doing down here? I thought you
And
said
they're
this
about
was...
to get out of the car in cop uniforms, and they're about to be like, oh, it's the fucking cops.
It's the fuzz. It's the fuzz, mate. Turn it around. Get us out of here. It's the old Bill. I don't know if these guys are from London. That's more of a Londoner thing. Yeah, they call the old Bill like that's a city boy thing.
Matches the description of the car they're looking for, and two, behind this gray sedan is what looks like a quad bike that they are towing. And so they know this is the car they were looking for. It's on Admore Lane. This is going to be it. And so Shaw, he flips on the blue lights, and Andrew, who's in the passenger seat, he opens the door and begins yelling at the occupants to stay where they are. But they don't listen, because now the masked men in the gray car, they know they've been caught. There's police right in front of them. And so suddenly, one of the masked men in the back seat of this car, he leaps out of the vehicle and he runs around to the back of the gray car and he unhooks the quad bike. And then the gray car, without even waiting for this third masked man to get back inside, it just begins driving forward on the left side of Shaw and...
You fucking wankers! Get back in the car, you... I can't say this.
Fuck both your mums when I get back.
Swear to God, I'll hit you over the head with a bottle of water. I'm sorry. It's just...
The idea of like British criminals is just funny to me because
Tally-ho, lads!
They're probably not armed with guns because it's the fucking UK.
Well, yeah, they probably got knives or blunt weapons, shit like that. You know, still dangerous.
And Andrew basically trying to drive around them, despite the fact there's nowhere to drive. It's a ditch on either side of the road. But obviously, these guys are desperate and willing to do anything to get away. And so this gray car has driven down into this ditch before Andrew and Shaw could do anything.
Funny because
then the third masked man, who's realizing he's being left behind, he starts running around the right side of the police car. So he's trying to go around the other way. And amazingly, as soon as the third masked man made it around to the back of the police car, the gray car somehow managed to pop out of the ditch and got back onto the road, and it starts driving away from Shaw and Andrew. And as they're driving away, the third masked man is just on the road running after them. And so Andrew, seeing an opportunity to potentially grab this third masked man that was out on foot, he jumps out of the police car, he turns and starts running down the road after the suspects. And so Shaw, he doesn't have enough space on this road to turn around and drive after them. And so all he could do was put the car into reverse and then look over his shoulder and start driving in reverse after them. And so as Shaw is driving backwards down this road, he can see out of his rear window Andrew, who is chasing the third masked man, who is chasing the gray car. And so we can see all this happening out his back window. And then something totally strange that just defied logic happened. The third masked man suddenly leaps as if he's trying to jump into the moving car. And at the same time, Andrew, who's closed the distance on him, kind of lunges for the third masked man. And then just as suddenly as these two maneuvers have happened, both men just vanish, and then the gray car just drives away and disappears. And so Shaw, he's watching this happening, and he has no idea what he's just witnessed. He's thinking, where did Andrew go? Where'd the third masked man go? What's happened? But he still can only drive in reverse, and so he's just driving, and then finally he reaches a point in the road that's just wide enough that he's able to turn the car around, and as he's doing that, you hear over dispatch that someone is asking Shaw, what's going on? Where are you? And all Shaw is able to say is, my partner, Andrew, has gotten out of the vehicle and I lost him. I don't know where he is. And so after Shaw has turned the vehicle around, he begins driving, now facing the proper direction. And as he's driving down this creepy dark road, you don't see anything. It's eerily quiet. Andrew's nowhere to be found. The car is nowhere to be found. The third masked man, there's no one. And so Shaw is just driving down the road, hoping that as he makes one turn or the next, he's gonna see his partner just kind of running on the road somewhere, but he doesn't. But as he's driving along, what Shaw didn't realize was that there were things in the road that belonged to Andrew. They were kind of small, so he didn't see them, but the footage would later reveal that it was almost like there was this trail of Andrew's things kind of littered all over the road. There was his wallet, then there was his badge, then there was his license and other ID cards, and then there was his glove, and then there was this piece of plastic that looked like it belonged on Andrew's vest. And then a little farther down the road, because Shaw is still driving and scanning for his partner and scanning for anything, and there's just nothing. As he's driving along, he would, in real time, notice something of Andrew's, and it was Andrew's stab vest that he wore over his chest. And so he stops the vehicle and he gets out, and again, he's on this totally pitch black road where it's weirdly quiet, and he's walking up and he grabs the vest, he comes back into his vehicle and he puts it down inside of his car, and
what
at this
had to
point,
have
over the
happened
radio,
is the back door had to have been open as the dude jumped into the car. His partner
Andrew
grabbed
got in there
him and
too.
he got a hold of him and they dragged him in, and then the guy's partner was probably armed with like a machete or something and probably immediately killed him. And then they drug both into the car, and then they were probably going through his shit on his body and throwing it out the window one by one, like, yeah.
Maybe.
people are asking Shaw, what's going on? Where are you? And you hear in Shaw's voice a bit of panic as he's like, I've found Andrew's stab vest. It was on the side of the road. And he can't make sense of that. He has no idea why it's there. And dispatch, they don't know what to make of that. And so Shaw just continued driving down this road, thinking to himself, what's happening here? Meanwhile, less than a mile away at the end of Admore Lane, where it joined up with A4, which is where Andrew and Shaw had originally come in, two other Thames Valley police cars had arrived at that intersection. They had gone there specifically to try to intercept this gray car as they fled. And so they're sitting at this intersection and they're looking up Admore Lane and they see headlights bombing towards them. It's the gray car, and the gray car comes speeding out onto A4. It makes a hard turn and it speeds away from these two police cars. And so one of these two police cars that were waiting out on the A4, one of them takes off following the gray car. But the other police car, they stay right there because unbelievably, they had just spotted Andrew. It would turn out when Shaw first put the BMW into reverse and he began going in reverse towards his partner who was chasing the third masked man who was chasing the gray car, when he was doing that and he was watching out his back window and he saw the third masked man jump and then disappear and then Andrew disappeared, that was not a figment of his imagination. That really happened. The third masked man had attempted to jump into the moving vehicle and he had been successful. As for Andrew, why he suddenly vanished, the reason for that is truly horrific. The three masked men were 18-year-old Henry Long and 17-year-olds Albert Bowers and Jesse Cole. All three of them, prior to this night, had fairly extensive criminal records, and they proudly referred to themselves as career thieves, which basically just meant they spent all day and all night stealing from people. And so that night, they had gone out with the intention of stealing that man's quad bike. It's unclear how they knew he had a quad bike, but they definitely showed up prepared because they knew they would have to get onto his property and very quickly tow that bike out of there before the homeowner could stop them. And so they had attached this long, very thick rope to the back of their gray car. It was basically like this big loop of
He
rope,
got caught
almost
in
like
the
a lasso.
rope and drugged
And so
by the
when they
car.
pulled up onto that man's property, they backed up to the
That's
quad
why his
bike
stuff was
and they
coming out of his
looped that stretch
pockets
of rope
and
over the
that's why
vest
his
eventually tore off.
His vest looked like it'd been like...
Yeah, it eventually tore off.
handlebars of this quad bike, and then all three of them piled back into the gray car and they sped off with the quad bike in tow. But when they were on Admore Lane and came face to face with Andrew and Shaw and realized those are police officers and were caught, the third masked man, aka Jesse Cole, he hopped out of the gray car, he ran around to the back, and he unhooked the loop of rope from this quad bike, ditching the quad bike by the side of the road so that it would be easier for the gray car to make their getaway. And so once it was free, the gray car kind of took off without Jesse, and so Jesse ran around the
You
cop
can see
car,
the-
but
there's the
Jesse
rope
would
right
get
there.
back up to the side of the gray car and he would leap into the window, and as soon as he was inside and Henry, who was driving, he knew he was inside, so they're all good, Henry hit the gas.
I can
And
actually
Apu
kind of see
was
his, Andrew get caught in the rope right there too, I think.
Yeah.
standing with both feet inside of that loop of rope dangling off the back of the gray car when the gray car suddenly accelerated. Andrew Harper. Andrew was swept off of his feet as the rope grabbed onto his legs, and so his head came back and smashed into the ground, and then he was dragged for 91 seconds at an average speed of 42.5 miles per hour down Admore Lane. It was only after he had been dragged for over a mile, whipping violently side to side, smashing not only into the ground, but into trees and fence posts and shrubs, just getting destroyed on this road, that finally, when they pulled off of Admore Lane and got onto A4, that turn swung Andrew around and he smashed into a curb that dislodged him from the rope and sent him careening into traffic. At that point, one of those two
That's
police
why the other
cars
cop
took
car
off
didn't
after the
take
gray
off.
car in pursuit.
He saw that happen.
Yeah.
But the other car, they saw Andrew as he was thrown off the back of the gray car and launched onto A4. Now, initially, they actually thought that the suspects were just hauling a dead deer behind them because it looked like a bloody deer carcass was dangling behind the car. But when they ran up to see what it was, they saw it was their colleague. It was Andrew. And so immediately they tried to save his life. But Andrew's injuries were catastrophic. He had been destroyed. And so Andrew Harper would die at 11:45 p.m. on the side of the A4, about 20 minutes after he and his partner had so selflessly agreed to go after this car despite the fact they didn't have to. The three killers were arrested about 1 hour after Andrew had died. A police helicopter had spotted their car parked amongst some buildings about 4 miles away from where Andrew was found. During their trial, the three teens would say they had no idea that Andrew was attached to that tow rope as they sped down Admore Lane.
Doesn't matter.
This is despite the fact that the prosecution, they went out and recreated the exact scene that played out on Admore Lane. They used the same car, they used the same tow rope, and they used a very lifelike dummy that was the same size as Andrew Harper. It was 6'5", 200 pounds, and they strapped it on the back of the car, and they drove the same mile stretch to see what it would be like to drive with Andrew attached to the back. And these experts that went through this recreation over and over and over again, they said the same thing. It was nearly impossible to drive the car because as soon as the dummy would start to shift one way or the other, it would tug and pull on this little gray car. And so handling this car would have been a nightmare, not to mention the fact that the sound of Andrew grinding against the cement and smashing into trees and posts would have been extremely loud. And so the prosecution attested that there was absolutely no way that those three teens wouldn't have known that there was a person connected to the back of their car. Also,
my answer to that as a defense, and I'm not trying to really, make excuses for these guys, but they were obviously already panicking.
Yes.
And they were not thinking straight. And one of the things that I probably would have said if I was in a situation like that was like, you got caught on a fucking branch or something. What the fuck? Like, you fucking moron. Like, you know, like I would not, like, it wouldn't go through my brain that was the fucking cop that was dragging behind the car. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's so out there.
But
either way, like, you shouldn't have fucking ran from the cops and you're still responsible for his death.
yes.
Like,
I mean,
absolutely.
Involuntary, I don't think
like,
they
I could like semi believe that it didn't register in their brains that was the cop, but it doesn't matter. You're still responsible for his death.
Yes, 100%. Oh, lost the mouse there for a second.
Prosecution said that all along Admore Lane, they found blood on both sides of the road, high up into bushes and on trees, indicating that as Henry had driven along with Andrew behind him, he must have been swerving violently side to side, most likely, at least according to the prosecution, to try to dislodge the person that was stuck on the back of his car. But the three teens never changed their story. They also never once said they regretted what they did. They showed absolutely no remorse. And when the verdict was read, and these three teens were not found guilty of murder. They were found guilty of manslaughter, but everybody knew that was significantly better because the sentences were so much shorter. When that verdict came back, these three teens were punching the air and cheering and laughing, just making a complete spectacle out of it. And then after being led out of the courthouse with the devastated family of Andrew Harper basically watching them, they were smirking and smiling at the cameras and waving and just treating the whole thing like it was one big joke. Still to this day, none of them have apologized or expressed any regret or remorse about what happened. In fact, two of the killers, Jesse and Albert, they've come out publicly and said they're going to write a book about this crime, about killing Andrew Harper. And there's no indication that this book is being written because they feel bad. It's almost certainly being written because it's an opportunity to make money.
I hope somebody offs them.
I hope that these three get beaten severely, and I'm talking like teeth missing, bones broken, concussions. I'm hoping that these three get the mauling of their lives at the hands of karma. I'm not saying like if I were the family of, you know, Andrew, I probably would want retribution in some way like that. Just, you know, true justice. But I just can't help but think this is just so fucked up. Like, the fact that he died and these three boys are just like serving like a paltry manslaughter charge like that. I mean, I would say that you could probably get them at least on second-degree murder. Like, at least that. You know, there was no premeditated or anything like that.
They didn't come there with the idea of killing someone, but they did kill someone.
Yes.
And they didn't give a shit that they did.
Yeah, murder in the second degree, I think, would be the...
It wasn't manslaughter at that point.
No.
I think especially with what the prosecution came up with. They should have been responsible. Like, whenever they said manslaughter, I was just like, really?
Yeah.
Like, I was like I said, it's like, I could see you not realizing in the moment that you were dragging a person, thinking you had some big branch or some shit attached to your car, and you were trying to swerve it off, and you were panicking because you were like, if we stop, the cop's gonna catch up with us. Like, you know, and like, but either way, you were the one that made the decision to run from the cops, and because of what happened, because of it, you should be responsible.
Well, your
for
actions
the
determine the
death
outcome
to the full
of the
extent.
entire event.
Yep.
You're like, you could say, oh, you know, we didn't voluntarily, you know, try to kill this person, but in the moment, I don't think you cared. You didn't care to think that there was a person behind you. You didn't care to think that there was a human being being dragged behind you. Mm-hmm. And for that, I think definitely a charge of second-degree murder would be warranted at 100%. Second or third degree murder. I mean, because that's still potentially 15 years to life. Like, that is, to me, the most firm like justice that these kids could have gotten, but instead no, manslaughter, and instead they're going to be writing a book because I want to be famous. I want to be seen as a proper villain, you know. I want to be known up there. I want to be like Bronson. I want to be like the Cray twins. I want to be like yeah, fuck that, dude. Like if you want to be you little wannabe gangsters, you little street urchins who want to pretend like you're something special, like you're a bad motherfucker. No, you ain't shit.
Not to mention they basically admitted to being career thieves.
Yes,
so, like,
career thieves.
They should be in prison for a while, anyways.
One would hope.
Following the verdict, Andrew's wife, Lissy, who was totally devastated not only by the loss of her husband, but also by what she viewed as total injustice with regards to the fact that these 3 killers had not been convicted of murder, she would go on to lobby for years to pass a brand new law called Harper's Law that would give an automatic life sentence to any criminal that killed an emergency worker while they were committing a crime, meaning this law would not differentiate between whether it was manslaughter or murder. If you killed an emergency worker while committing a crime, you're going to jail for life. And this year, Harper's Law was passed. However, it will have no effect on the sentences of Andrew Harper's killers. Henry would be sentenced to 16 years in prison, and the other 2, Albert and Jesse, would be sentenced to 13 years in prison each.
Okay, so 16 and 13 years, that's a lot better than what I was expecting. I was expecting them to get like 6 to 8 years.
I was expecting like less than a year with fucking manslaughter charge, you know? It's like, it was an accident, so we're not going to get a bunch.
Yeah, look at this.
Fuck them. At least they go to prison for a while. I hope someone in prison fucking just reams their assholes.
Well,
I hope the biggest dude there makes them his bitch.
Just looking at these 3 smiling, these 2 smiling faces right here. It's just like, punk bitches like you are gonna get served up on a silver platter.
I hope the guy's face on the right is what I think it is, and he's like, yeah, they may be smiling, but they ain't gonna be smiling in a little while. He's
like, oh, if these boys only knew what was in store for them, I'll tell you, mate, you're gonna go to prison, and you're gonna be turned into a fucking blow-up doll. That's what's gonna happen to you, mate. So you're smiling now, but you're gonna get fucked. I'm going to
walk you into the prison cell, and I'm going to tell everyone there, including the biggest, scariest guys, exactly what just happened, including you.
Like,
smiling.
and you know what I would do? I would also spread the rumor that they're they're child molesters. Oh, they'll get a warm welcome then. Mm-hmm. That's what I would do.
Because I mean, like, to be honest, like, cop killer's not really a thing that's gonna get you fucked up in prison. Probably, you know, it's gonna get you fucked up by the other cops.
There's some guards and some prisoners who have a mutual agreement. It's just like anyone who goes after officers or has killed officers. At least it is in the American prison system. I've understood like how some of the politicking works in.
Well, I'm also assuming in the UK that police are probably a little more respected than they are in the United States because, there's not as many firearms there, so they're not shooting as many people probably.
Well, there's still a movement against police. Where do you think ACAB comes from? ACAB, all cops are bastards.
I thought that was a United States thing.
No, it's Europe. Europe had that before, the Antifa assholes stole it. What else is new?
Will be eligible for parole by the time they are 28 years old, which is the same age that Andrew was when they killed him. So that's going to do it. If you got something out of today's episode and you haven't done this already, please remove the prong from all of the like buttons belts. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. We now have a podcast just called Mr. Ballin Podcast that puts out brand new, never before heard podcast exclusive stories on Monday mornings. On Thursday mornings, we put up remastered audio files from our most popular YouTube videos. Again, it's just called Mr. Ballin Podcast, and you can find it on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, Google, basically anywhere you find your podcasts. you can find this one. We also have 2 additional YouTube channels. One is called Mr. Ballin Shorts, and the other is called Mr. Ballin en Espanol. We also post near daily content on our Facebook and Snapchat pages. Those are just called Mr. Ballin. If you want to get in touch with me, please follow me on any major social media platform and then send me a direct message. My username on all of them is just at Mr. Ballin, and I really do read the majority of my DMs. We have some really cool merchandise, so head on over to shopmrballin.com to have a look. And if you have a story suggestion, please submit it to our subreddit just called Mr. Ballin. It's linked in the description below. So whether I see you on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Reddit, YouTube, Facebook, other YouTube channels, the podcast, wherever, just know that I really appreciate your support. And until next time, that's going to do it. See ya.
At the very least, I hope that his partner, the other Andrew,
Yeah.
maybe got some time with those boys without any cameras around or something.
I heard about this, and it's, to me, one of the most true justice served. This guy, his daughter was
Assaulted.
No, it was by this one guy, and basically
so assaulted and murdered as well.
Yeah. So basically, the worst possible thing that could have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And the kid was in court smiling about it, bragging about it, and showed no remorse about it. And the father was friends with people on the police force. And this kid, was just bragging about how, in prison they're going to treat me like gold, they're going to treat me like this. I'm a gang affiliated, so I'm going to breeze through prison. It ain't going to be shit. And
so they managed to get the dad in without cameras on somewhere with him, I'm hoping.
The police, the officers that had him in a holding cell, basically, they told him, hey, they were like, hey, we're going to head out for a second while someone comes in here to get you settled and picked up so we can take you back to the prison. It'll be a moment, so don't worry. He was cuffed as well. He was cuffed down to the chair. There's those chairs that had the hooks in it that, and in walked the dad. And the boy was just like, well, what the fuck are you doing here? And from what it was said, he had 6 minutes alone with the guy, and when he left the room, there was blood on the floor. There was also some teeth missing, and a broken leg, and a fractured hip. And the father was a big guy too. He was like 6'3", weighed about 225, and this kid was about 5'9", 160 pounds soaking wet. And the dad basically tuned him up something fierce. And there was actually a big investigation about it because eventually they did find out, like, the officers that did this got fired, but they said that I don't have any remorse for this happening.
Nope.
I don't.
They shouldn't.
And the state...
I wouldn't normally ever condone any kind of like police brutality or anything, but that is a situation where I feel like that is 100% the right thing.
Well, technically it wasn't the police, it was the father.
Yeah, no, but like they allowed it to happen, under their watch, and like I feel like that is 100% like they are amazing people for doing that.
Yes, I agree with that.
Wherever the justice system fails, like if someone else wants to step in my opinion, like people can like say fuck it to vigilante justice all they want, but sometimes it's deserved.
Well, and I would ask this about anyone who would say, that's the gross misuse of this. It's like, what if it was the person you held closest to you? The person you held closest, and not only were they not remorseful, but they were bragging about it. Bragging about it to your face. Bragging about it to everybody. Saying that they were, like they weren't going to be punished for this at all. You know, like their life in prison was going to be easy and this and that and blah, blah, blah.
Anybody that could honestly look me in the eye and say that I would let it go, I would just be like, well, Jesus would respect you more than he would me.
Yeah. There you go. So
try to live Jesus-like, but there's just lines that shouldn't be crossed. And places that I just am too flawed of a person to be Jesus-like in, you know?
I'm sort of the same way. I would let, if, you know, I felt justice could be served and everything, I would let it be served. But if I felt like there was something that was wrong and I needed to make it right, then I'd probably do something to I don't know what would have to happen, but I would try my damnedest. But anyway.
I'm glad that she got that law passed, because even if it doesn't affect them, and fuck them, and I hope someone fucks them up, but she managed to make a change in the country because of the situation, which at least is some sort of justice on, you know, it's better than nothing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, affecting change is something, at least. It's like, it's not as good as, like, what should have happened to those dudes, but damn, man. My cat has just been sitting there staring at something for the past forever. What do you see, Mr. Cutie? Mr. Cutie? Mr. Cutie? What are you looking at?
All right. So, anyway, everybody, thank y'all very much for tuning in. This was Mr. Ballin. They had to make a special law because of him. And, yeah, this one was very sad and very, like, angering to me. But I guess until next time, signing off, I'm Nate.
I'm Nick.
See you later, everybody. Peace.